this is a quick video on how to make Brian's famous Facebook croutons that everybody has been raging about on my wall. Alright, so the first thing you want to do is you want to start out with a good bread that you happen to like. This happens to be the cheddar cheese signature breads from Walmart I can't even talk. The first thing you want to do is start out with your favorite bread. We happen to like the cheddar cheese bread from Walmart.
But I can't have any until those croutons are done for you guys.
That's right. So you take it out of the bag, and basically what I do is I just take it and I cut the loaf in half with a bread knife. Yeah, why not a steak knife? Why not a butter knife? And you'll see that gives you two nice equal halves. The next thing you want to do is cut those halves in half again. So now your halves are halved and they're getting thinner. And basically just cut it to the appropriate size that you want for the croutons that you're going to be making. So if you've got a big mouth, make them big. If you've got a small mouth, make them small. And basically just cut up little cubes for the size that you want for the croutons. And in a minute we're going to transfer these into a bowl. So I'm going to keep cutting these and then come back and tell you the next step. Alright, so the next step is to take a large bowl, and I use olive oil for this, but just drizzle a little bit of olive oil to coat the bottom of the bowl. And if you're a gourmet cook like I am, you will have one of these nifty, handy-dandy little olive oil dispensers. Otherwise, you may just pour it right out of the bottle. Who knows? But then what you do is you just take, handfuls of the croutons and put them into the bowl of oil. And as you can see, these are decent sized. But put them all in the bowl. Every last one of them. I would never succeed on the Food Network because I don't know what to say in the middle of all of this random stuff that goes on. And then just drizzle a little bit of extra oil on the top. And then get some type of a spoon, wooden spoon or something, and then toss these in the bowl until they're evenly coated with olive oil. And the way you can know that they're evenly coated is the entire piece of bread should have a yellow tint to it if you're using olive oil. It's okay if they get a little soggy because when you cook them in the oven, they're going to crisp right back up again, so you don't need to worry about getting too much oil in there. In fact, the more oil, the better the crouton will be. So just keep mixing these up, and if you find that you need a little bit more oil because you're stirring and things just aren't getting coated enough, you can just drizzle a little bit of extra oil in. What are you saying back there in the peanut gallery?
Talk about how your wife and kids don't even get one little slice of bread while you're making the crouton.
That's right. Carolyn loves this particular type of bread, and when I make croutons for people or us, she gets really mad because I won't let her have any of the bread, and if I do, it's pretty much just the scraps that are left over.
I'm not a puppy.
So, yeah, she said she's not a puppy, so she doesn't deserve scraps. She deserves the good stuff.
Yeah.
So once they're all mixed, we're ready to transfer them onto our cookie sheet. So grab any type of cookie sheet you'd like. I happen to use these kind of like air bake flat cookie sheets. Hun, is there some other way I could describe these better?
No.
No, you think that's good?
Yeah, just give me
Alright, so you put the cookie sheet here, and then I actually use somewhat of a deep spoon to scoop out the bread onto the cookie sheet. It's not necessary. If you want to do this with kids or something and they want to get their hands all dirty, you can just have them reach into the bowl and grab a nice big handful of oily, greasy bread and put it on the cookie sheet. Make sure that they're spread apart so that they're not on top of each other and making a big pile of oily bread here. And basically all we're going to do is we're going to put these into the oven. I typically use the broiler on the low setting. And there's no specific time. Carolyn's in the background asking how long, but because everybody's oven works differently, and depending on the altitude that you happen to be at, your oven will require more or less time depending on where you find yourself. So basically what I do is I just put the broiler on low and I keep a close eye on it and make sure that I don't let them burn, but I want them to be nice and crispy. So we're ready to transfer them into the oven. Alright, so it's been a few minutes, so let's just take a peek in the oven. Pull them out real quick and see how they're doing. Looking good. And if you actually just give one like a little touch with your finger, you can tell whether or not it's starting to crisp up yet. If you're in a rush sometimes, like I am, to get this video done, you can put the broiler on high and move them up to the top shelf, but you really have to pay close attention, otherwise they will burn. So while these bad boys are cooking, Carolyn gave me some ideas about some filler material that I can share with everybody while we're waiting for these to brown up nice for us and get crispy. So, what would you say, hon? How it's so much easier to make them this way that it's not even really worth buying them in the bag at the store?
Kinda. I said it's so easy you don't buy them in a bag.
It's so easy that I just don't buy them in a bag. I make them on my own. And this recipe actually also works if you want to serve a little bit of an alternative to your typical garlic bread type of side with a meal. Instead of cutting up little cubes, you just cut up little slices of bread and you drizzle olive oil on them, put them in under the broiler. You can also grill them. So during the summer you can put them on the grill if you want. And then in a minute I'm going to show you guys the secret to the crouton flavor, which is the spices that I use. Alright, I think it's time to check these puppies again. Oh yeah, look at that, nice and crispy. See if we can go in for a close-up here. Nice and crispy, not burnt. So now basically what you need to do, and this all depends on how much you care about those that you're making these croutons for. In my case, I deeply care about the people that I'm making these for.
Yeah, but it's not your wife and your kids.
Yeah, it's not my own family, it's other people. I mean, that's what's important, right? So, basically, you go in by hand and individually flip over each crouton so that you put the crispy side on face down onto the cookie sheet, and you're basically putting the still oily side face up on the cookie sheet, because now we're going to put it back in under the broiler and let the other side cook equally as crispy. So here's some more filler information. I first came across this recipe at some friend's house. They served it with a pasta dish, and it was actually served soft, like the croutons were not crispy or crunchy at all. They were soft, and they were mixed in with the pasta. However, I made my own modification, which, like I said earlier, if you're a gourmet cook like I am, you basically steal everything from everybody else, but you tweak it to be how you like it, and then you call it your own. Sweet how that works. So basically, I've changed this from a soft crouton served with a pasta dish to a crispy crouton served in a bag with salad or just as a snack. Some people like to take them out and brag to everybody else that they have them when everybody else is eating lame-o croutons, of which I had some today that were from some women's conference at my church. They don't even come close to these babies. So it looks like we have them all turned over for the most part here. You can easily tell just by looking across the cookie sheet. And if you see any brown crispy areas, then you need to turn that particular one over. Even if it's a bottom with like the crust of the bread, that's okay because you need that to cook up too. Otherwise that'll be soft. Alright, I think we're good to go. So we're going to pop these back in the oven. Again under the broiler. So like any good chef you see on these programs on TV, when they're making something that's going to involve some decent amount of preparation time and it's going to take a little bit of time to get the dish out on the table, they always have a swap out, is what we use in the industry. It's called a swap out dish. And so just to tempt your taste buds, I do have a swap out dish of croutons that I would like to show you. Nice and crispy. Wicked good. Today's recipe is brought to you by Sprite. This is the beverage of choice that I choose to indulge in while I'm waiting for my delicious croutons to finish cooking. I smell croutons. Anybody else? So I just took these out of the oven. As you can see, they're nice and golden brown. So what we need to do now is, since they just came out of the oven, we got to let them rest for a couple minutes. I'd say probably about 2 minutes, 3 minutes at the most. And that'll allow the cooking process to continue so that they get a little bit crunchier. But once we wait that 3 minutes, we're then going to transfer them into our bowl. And we will then mix in the spices that we put on the croutons themselves. Alright, so now that we've let our croutons rest for a little bit, we're going to transfer them into our bowl to add in the seasoning. Now, you might want to use a spatula. However, I grew up in a family where we just used our hands to serve things and pick things up. So, God gave us our hands for something, right? As long as they're clean, like Carolyn said. A lot of times in these cooking shows, you never see people washing their hands. It's just assumed that they've washed their hands, but then again, for those of you that are going to be indulging in these croutons, how do you know I washed my hands before I shot this video clip? I think I have to sneeze. Just kidding, everybody.
I know.
Okay, so now we've transferred them into our bowl, and now we have to do what I call the magic seasoning here. First thing I like to add is some garlic salt. Oops, let me cover up the store I bought it at so I don't get in trouble for advertising without permission. Garlic salt. So we're going to throw some garlic salt into the bowl. I usually measure it out in my hand a little bit, a little pile in my hand here, and then sprinkle it over the croutons. And this part here, this step here is really going to be you just seasoning how you like it to taste. So what I usually do is just recommend mixing in what you think you might want in there and then tasting it, and if you want more of something, you just add it in. The next seasoning I'm going to use is called Salad Supreme by McCormick. And this is a blend of all kinds of different things. The funny thing about this Salad Supreme is I've mixed it into hamburger patties before, just to give it some extra seasoning. Okay. And the funny thing is it actually has red pepper flakes in it. But the only time we can taste the spiciness of red pepper flakes is when we've put them in hamburger patties. You will not taste them on these croutons for some strange reason, and I don't know why that is. But go ahead and just put some of this salad supreme seasoning in here. Again, this will be to your preference, so I would say start with a little bit and then add more as you need. And the last spice, actually, sorry, that's not the last one, but the second to last will be some oregano. A very popular Italian spice. Sprinkle the oregano in there. Yeah, what the heck, I'll just throw it. And then again, if you want to use your spoon that you used earlier to mix all this up, you can. If you want to use your hands, you can use your hands. I always wash my hands when I'm handling other people's food, so you don't need to worry about anything. I just dropped one on the floor. I'll just pick that up and put it in the bag. But basically what you want to do here is mix it up until you feel everything's been coated generously with the spices. And you don't want them to cool down too long when you take them out of the oven, because while they're still hot, the oil is still kind of moist in the bread, in the very center part of the bread. And that'll actually help with the spices to adhere to the crouton itself. So as I said, that was the second to last spice, the oregano. If you find that when you eat these, it doesn't have enough of the salty flavor that you like, you can either add in some more of the garlic salt, or just add in some regular old table salt. Alright, so if we take a crouton here and try to do a close-up, you can kind of see the spicing on there. But really, the only way to test whether or not it's going to be to your liking. I like salt, so it needs a little bit of salt. But since I always talk with their mouths full on the cooking shows, I'm going to do the same thing. If you find that you have them seasoned the way you like them, and everything tastes just great, what you're going to do is just transfer these to a plate. This is going to sound kind of weird, but transfer them to a plate and then put them in the refrigerator for a couple hours. And that'll help them firm up a little bit more so that they're a little crunchier. And then transfer them to a bag for storage, and you're done. So this whole thing probably took me, if I was making them without videotaping myself, probably took me about 15 minutes total from start to finish. Maybe 20 minutes. I mean, because when you're good, so. Any last words, honey? Her heat bar is delicious. Nothing's better than these stinking croutons.